Hello everyone, Archana is here. Welcome to the fourth session of Presentation in English. In today's session, let us deal with the first prose, The Gentlemen of the Jungle, written by Jomo Kenyatta. Before we get into the prose, let us know about the author. The Gentlemen of the Jungle is a fable written by Jomo Kenyatta, was an African political leader, first president of independent Kenya. A Kikuyu, he was one of the earliest and best known African nationalist leaders. As secretary of his tribal association in 1928, he campaigned for land reform and African political rights. Kenyatta included this story in his book Facing Mount Kenya in 1938 as an illustration of the relations between the Kikuyu people and Europeans. This story reflects the attitude of Kikuyu people of Kenya toward European laws and commissions. So it was in the late 19th century the European powers divided Africa among themselves. This story begins in a context where an act of kindness misunderstood as weakness. The story, The Gentlemen of the Jungle by Jomo Kenyatta, is a fable that satirizes the colonization of Africa by the European powers, which claim to be reforming the natives, while in reality they confine them because of their greed for expansion. The story can be described as an allegory because the writer uses animal figures to throw light on similar human situations. The word gentleman is ironically used to point out that the usurper are far from being gentlemanly. The story begins with the selfless act of a man who allows his friend, an elephant, to put his trunk inside his hut when there is heavy rain. But the elephant, instead of remaining grateful, encroaches upon the hut of the man and throws him out. When the wrong man starts arguing with the elephant, the confusion attracts many animals from the nearby jungle, including the Lion King, who is displeased that the peace of his jungle is disturbed by the misunderstanding between the man and the elephant. The elephant, one of the ministers of the king, pacifies the Lion King by assuring him that there is no threat to peace, but that he was having a discussion with his friend. The Lion King, pleased that the man is a friend of the animals, assures him that his hut is not lost to him and that he would get it back depending upon the finding of a commission that would be appointed to look into the matter. So, students, the man was very pleased, very happy by the sweet words from the king of the jungle and innocently waited for his opportunity in the belief that naturally the hut would be returned to him. But what happened? The elephant, obeying the command of his master, the Lion King, got busy with other ministers to appoint the commission of inquiry. The following elders of the jungle were appointed to sit in the commission. They are Mr. Rhinoceros, Mr. Buffalo, Mr. Alligator, the retired Honorable Mr. Fox to act as chairman, and Mr. Leopard to act as secretary to the commission. The man who is initially happy at the fairness of the king is soon in for a shock, as all members on the commission are animals and there is absolutely no representation from his side. But his protest is silenced with the explanation that his kind is not educated enough to understand the intricacy of the jungle law. He is also told that these representatives have been specially chosen by God to carry out the work. The man is assured that these members of repute would be impartial in their judgment. But as the man had feared, the elephant succeeds at winning the case by deposing before the court the false idea that the man had asked the elephant to protect his hut from the hurricane at the time of the torrential rain. The elephant boastfully says that since the hurricane had gained access to the hut because of the empty space available, he had occupied the empty space and put it to more economic use. Since the man had to admit that the undeveloped place hadn't been occupied by anyone else before the elephant had occupied it. The elephant's act is considered an act of kindness, and the man is ordered to build another hut at another place. The wrong man has no alternative but to build a new hut because he is afraid that the powerful animals on the commission would be cruel to him. However, the tale of the man doesn't end with the elephant. The next hut he built is taken by Mr. Rhinoceros, another animal on the commission, and the same verdict awaits the man. His lot is no better even after that because all the huts he builds are usurped by other members on the commission. That is Mr. Buffalo, Mr. Leopard, and Mr. Hyena. One by one started to occupy the hut built by the man. Finally, the poor man thinks of a plan. He builds a hut which is big enough to accommodate all the animals. As he had expected, all animals, including Mr. Lion, come to the hut, and soon there ensues a fight among all. Making use of the opportunity, the man sets his hut on fire. And along with the hut, all animals gathered in it are also dead. Thus, the man gets justice by taking law into his own hands. Although traditionally the act of the man seems to be clever but immoral, we cannot be harsh upon him in our judgment. He acts as he does simply because he has no other way to get justice. So students, here we have winded up the prose. Let us conclude the prose. Once an elephant made a friendship with a man. One day, due to a heavy thunderstorm, the elephant went to his friend for shelter. The kind man offered to let the elephant put his trunk inside his hut, as he had room only for him and the trunk of the elephant. But the cunning elephant pushed his head inside and flung the man out. The man started to grumble and started to argue with his friend. Disturbed, the lion came roaring and sought to know why there was disturbance. The elephant replied that he had only been discussing with friend the possession of the little hut. The lion wanted to have peace and tranquility in his kingdom. So he commanded his ministers to appoint a commission of inquiry and report accordingly. The man was pleased by the sweet words from the king of the jungle. The following elders were appointed to sit in the commission. That is Mr. Rhinoceros, Mr. Buffalo, Mr. Alligator, the retired Honorable Mr. Fox as chairman, and Mr. Leopard as secretary to the commission. But there was no one from the man's side. When he protested, he was told that there was no one from his side who was well educated to understand intricacy of the jungle law. He was further assured that there was nothing to fear since the members of the commission were chosen by God and they were endowed with teeth and claws. So they would investigate the matter with greatest care. The commission sat to take the evidence. Mr. Elephant justified his act, saying that he had always regarded it as his duty to protect the interests of his friends, and that had caused the misunderstanding. He said that his friend had invited him to save his hut from being blown away by a hurricane. The elephant said that he considered it necessary to turn the undeveloped space to a more economic use by sitting in it. The elders of the jungle supported what Mr. Elephant had said. Then the man began to give his account. The commission cut him short and asked him if the undeveloped space in his hut was occupied by anyone else before Mr. Elephant assumed his position. The man was bewildered. Finally, the commission gave its verdict. It was not on the expected lines of man. They concluded that the dispute had arisen through a misunderstanding due to the backwardness of man's ideas. They defended Mr. Elephant's actions, saying that he had fulfilled his sacred duty of protecting man's interests. They considered that the space should have been put to its most economic use. As man had not yet reached the stage of expansion, they arranged a compromise to suit both parties. Accordingly, Mr. Elephant would continue to occupy his hut, whereas the man was advised to look for a site to build another hut. The man did as suggested, for he feared the teeth and claws of the commission, but the same fate awaited. A new hut was built, Mr. Rhinoceros occupied, a royal commission was appointed only to give the same finding. This procedure went on till all were accommodated with new huts. The man by now had decided to adopt an effective method. When the huts already occupied by the jungle lords were beginning to decay, he built a bigger and better hut. As soon as the animals saw it, one by one came and occupied the space they found. They soon started to fight over their rights of penetration. The man found the perfect opportunity and set the hut on fire and burnt it to the ground while the animals were all inside. He was finally relieved to find peace in costly, but it is worth the expense. So, hence, the prose, The Gentleman of the Jungle, tells us the story of a man living alone in the jungle with many animals. This man is fooled by an elephant that pretends to be his friend, and a dispute begins, therefore, between them. The Lion King of the Jungle offers the man the opportunity to state his case before a commission entirely composed of animals, whose impartiality is consequently doubtful to such an extent that the elephant is declared innocent and the man has to give up his hut and build another one somewhere else. The same scene happens again and again. The man builds other huts which are successfully confiscated by a rhinoceros, buffalo, a leopard, a hyena, and other animals. So, he decides to take extreme measures, manages to gather all the animals together in a big hut, then sets the hut on fire and burns it completely. So much so that he finds himself alone and tranquil, having got rid of the cruel animals and being ready to enjoy a costly peace. The story finishes with a moral maxim. As in every parable, peace is costly, but it is worth the expense. The author has treated the themes of injustice, abuse of power, and racism in a colorful, simple, and sober style, but the moral is clear and brilliant. about the title, that is The Gentleman of the Jungle. A fable is a common genre in literature that uses animals as characters in a story where there is a moral lesson at the end. This lesson is clearly integrated into the story so that readers understand it immediately. The animals have to meet the general requirement of what animals are like. Lions are brave, wolves are cruel, horses proud, and foxes cunning. You all might be have heard about Aesop fables. So Aesop fables are the inspiration of this genre, and they were handed down throughout centuries orally and not written down until the 16th century. Aesop was originally a slave but worked his way upward as a talented teller in Phrygia, Greece, etc. The parable is slightly different from a fable in that it contains a secret meaning that is hidden in the language itself and one which is not automatically understood in the story. The Gentleman of the Jungle seems to be more advanced than a fable as it requires the reader to understand the intricacy of the language and its connotations in order to understand the moral lesson. The lesson was sometimes dangerous in fables as they addressed controversial social issues and conflicts. Aesop was probably killed in the end because of his talent to teach and make people think independently. The Gentleman of the Jungle is also a political fable as it raises controversial issues in modern society. Kenyatta made a reference to this conflict when he said that the relations between Kikuyu and the Europeans can be well illustrated by this Kikuyu story. The title refers to the British gentleman who always plays fair and who is just and has moral integrity. The contrast between this and the jungle is that of primitiveness and lack of social and political development. The implication is an imbalance between the terms where one is superior and the other inferior. Home assignment. Answer the following questions in a paragraph. First question: do you agree with the action of the man at the end? Why? Second question: an act of kindness is misunderstood as weakness. Discuss this with reference to the story. And third question: peace is costly but is worth the expense. What is the ironical significance of this statement? Thank you all.